and welcome to another episode of Ask an Assistant, the show for executive assistants and the people that love us. I'm your host, Jess Lindgren. Let's get to work. This week's question comes from esteemed colleague Lauren. Lauren wrote in via askanassistant.com. Hi, Jess. I get occasional requests from team members to help book things like meetings or offsite events, but I never get enough details in the initial request. This usually causes a ton of back and forth, often with long gaps in response time from the team member, and then the planning window is shortened and things become urgent. I know a lack of planning on someone else's part does not constitute an emergency on mine, but I am often made to feel that way or to prioritize something that we could have gotten a start on much earlier while other tasks suffer. Do you have any pointers for getting my team to tell me specifically what they need from the get-go? Lauren, absolutely I do. This is tale as old as time. This is Executive Assistant 101. People are going to come to you with a request and just, I don't know if assume is the right word, but just kind of think since they are asking for something that you just magically know what it is that they need, when that is almost never the case. I have been an executive assistant for 20 plus years. I've been with my present executive for 10 years, rather. I have not been with him for 20. We just crossed 10 years last month. And still, there are times where, we definitely have shorthand. There are definitely people that I know if he says schedule XYZ with this person, I know what he means. But there are certainly things, and he's gotten so much better about this over the years. Like he specifically knows that I'm just going to come back to him with, well, who needs to be on the invite? What's going on? So the basic framework that I like to work with is pretty basic. It's just that. It's the 5 W's. I looked this up on Scholarly Journal Wikipedia just to get a little bit of historical context for this framework, if you will. The 5 W's, just your basic who, what, when, where, why. And Wikipedia includes how, which honestly I kind of had forgotten about. Didn't really consider it when I was thinking about this episode, was really more thinking about those 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why of it all. And that's what I'd love to talk with you about today. So for any event, something as seemingly simple as a one-to-one meeting, who needs to be there? Is it you and who's the other party? Is it you and 100 other people? Is it you and 500 other people? Is it you and 1,000 other people? Is it you and a monthly recurring board meeting? Who are the 10 people that need to be on that invite? Who is it? Like who needs to be involved? Getting that confirmation. One example that comes to mind for me is I used to set up, this was years ago, like 12 plus years ago. And I used to set up regular occurring meetings, and I would almost always, like truly almost always, I would forget to put the person who did the requesting onto the calendar invite. So they would say, hey, Jess, here's a list of all the people. If you could set it for this day, time, duration, whatever, that'd be great. And then I would send it to the people that they put on the list and not include them. And then like a week later, they'd be like, hey, did you take care of that seemingly simple task yet? It hasn't shown up on my calendar. And I'm just like, oh my God. So thankfully, learned some pretty important lessons about that in my last executive assistant role before my present one. But yeah, just like getting that confirmation, especially be specific with people. Because if you just say, John, it's unfortunate but true. How many people named John do you have in any given organization? Even in the small organization that I work within, it's just me and my executive. So we're a team of 2, Jess and Pat. But we are working on a project for our upcoming Pokemon event, which will be happening annually. On that team of 10 people, there are 2 Jesses and 2 Dans. You have to be specific. So just, get as specific as you can with people, get them to give you names. I always, even with my executive 10 years in, he'll say, oh, can you connect with so-and-so? And then I look through our archives and I say, well, I don't actually see any communication with this person. Can you confirm? I did a little digging. Is this right? Most of the time it is. Sometimes it's not. But just getting that confirmation of the names, the email addresses, whatever it is that you need, get the who of it all. Moving on next to the what. Is this a get to know you meeting? Is it a pre-podcast 15-minute, make sure we're on the same page and we'll have a good interview? Is it an actual podcast interview? Is this a meeting with a new client? Is this something related to an event that's coming up 6 months from now? It's my present executive works on a lot of different stuff. He's got a main podcast. He's got a few YouTube channels. He does a lot of public speaking, a lot of traveling. What is it? You've given me who is involved, but some of those people overlap in other capacities. So just knowing what is the context of the meeting is always so helpful. When. My goodness, the when. Time, date, duration, and time zone. I don't know where everyone lives. I always default. I personally live in New York, and I work Pacific hours because that's where my executive is based. So I always default, even when offering my own availability. I just give it in Pacific, but especially when I'm giving his availability, I'm very clear with people and I say, okay, all times offered are 30 minutes Pacific time zone. Here are the time windows. And the number of people that just say, oh yeah, I'll take the 2 p.m. Eastern. That's not it. So get as specific as you can with people, gentle reminders, and say, hey, I'd love to make that work, but unfortunately that falls outside of the availability. If we can pull this back into Pacific time zone, or hey, I noticed you're in Eastern. I would love to do that time conversion for you to make it happen. Do so. Timeanddate.com. It's your friend. But yeah, getting all of that information, like the number of people who come to me every single week, internal team members, external stakeholders, and the people that just say, hey, I'd love to get a meeting with Pat on the books. What does he got? When? And what do you need? Who? You and who else on your team? What is it? What's the purpose of this meeting? When is it? Don't just say, what has he got? It's April. He's got 7-8 more months this year. He's got lots of time. And the last piece of the when is your deadline for making a decision? The number of people that come to me, they ask for a book blurb, they ask for an interview, they ask for any number of things, and they don't tell us when they need it by. That's such an important piece of the when. And that wraps that section up. So moving on to the where, is this Zoom? Is this a phone call? Is this a Skype? Is this something where you just need to remember to text somebody back? Are we going to meet in person? Is it something casual like a coffee shop meeting? Is it a Michelin star restaurant where I need to get a reservation 6 months in advance and I need to have a contact on the inside? What is it? Where does this need to happen? Is this something like our upcoming event in June? Is this something happening in a different state at a hotel where we're renting out a significant portion of the venue? All of this is super important information that really just helps you nail down the details and move ahead with the research phase. And the last thing, why? Context is important. There's just so much nuance, even in something as seemingly simple as a one-on-one with someone. Is this a good one-on-one? Is this a bad one-on-one? Is this somewhere in between? Is this just a regular standing, you meet once a week, you meet once every other week? Kind of before, I touched on, is this a get to know you meeting? Is this a new client, somebody that you have an established relationship with? Tell me the why. This is so important and really helps me make some decisions on the back end with that request. So like I said, I really just, every person who asks me for time on my executive's calendar or time on mine, I really need that who, what, when, where, why. And if we're going with Wikipedia, with the how being the additional H after the 5 whys, the how is you. You're the executive assistant. You're going to be the person who's getting those 5 W's from the original requester. You're going to do some preliminary research. You can, after you've done that, regroup, present the research that you've done and say, okay, based on the who, what, when, where, why, here's the options that I've come up with, and go from there. Something that I really love to do when it is an in-person meeting, we just have a set location for casual coffee meetups. It's close to my executive's home. It's a place that he really loves, and everybody that we invite to that same location ends up loving it too. So it's just a huge win-win. If it's something where we need to send him to the client, we need to make it a little more convenient for them as opposed to convenient for us. That's obviously always an option. But even being based in San Diego, like my executive is, I lived in San Diego for 3 years. I have dozens of favorite places that I can say, okay, you're in North Park. Well, here are my suggestions. Oh, you're downtown. Here's where I'd love for you to go. Oh, you're in La Jolla. You have to go here. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So just having some of those favorites nailed down, especially if somebody is coming to San Diego, so great to be able to offer local recommendations like that. Obviously, simpler things are going to be simpler to execute. Something like that one-on-one, you connect the two parties, you make the time and the date happen, you get it on the calendar. Something more complex, like a full-scale fan event or conference, it's longer, it's more involved, a lot more people are in the mix, but as with all of it, you're just going to learn as you go. So Lauren, I really hope that was helpful. I would love to know from you if this framework, the 5 whys with the additional... the 5 W's rather, the 5 Y's is different. But the 5 W's with the optional H, would love to hear from you if that works, if that helps kind of teach your team as time goes on. People have definitely learned in my orbit, like people that I speak with pretty frequently, they might come to me with kind of a basic, hey, can I get some time on your exec's calendar? And then a couple minutes later realize that they really didn't give me any context. And then I'm just going to come back to them and say, okay, who, what, when, where, why? Let's make it happen. So thank you so much for tuning in today, Lauren, and everyone else. I would love to hear from you. askanassistant.com. Submit your questions for consideration. Feel free to leave a review. Don't feel free, feel fancy. I would love it if you were feeling fancy and left a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever it is that you consume your favorite audio media. Until next week, have a great one. Take care.